Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News. It's a couple of days late, but it's recorded, so you'll never know. I'll just upload it when I feel like it. So tonight's panel consists of Paul Clark. How the devil are you?
I'm very well. How are you, John?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. Yeah, could be worse. Mustn't grumble. Who was it said that?
I don't know. It's a very British thing to say, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Grumble.
Yes. Giving ourselves away here. Yeah. Anyway, straight into the news. Refugee athlete Manisa Talash was disqualified at the Olympics for displaying the words "Free Afghan Women" on her outfit during her Olympic breaking battle. Now, you may be aware that breakdancing, now called breaking, is now an Olympic sport. And she was competing for the refugee Olympic team because, of course, no official Afghan women came to the event because, of course, women are very much second-class citizens in Afghan since the Taliban.
Very much. Very much.
Yeah. So she was there in the B-Girl Talash description, and emblazoned on her back in large letters on a cape that she wore. I don't know if I've got a picture of this. Yes, I have. Here it is. Take a look. There's the message. Free Afghan women. Now, it doesn't look too horrible, does it?
I kind of think all sporting bodies are a bunch of hypocrites because they don't allow any political message to be in their sport. Commercial messages, yes.
Yes.
And especially, they're sponsored by McDonald's,
Yes.
Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola,
Yes.
Cadbury's,
Yes.
and all these companies which are not associated with a healthy lifestyle.
No.
Plus the gambling industry, football is sponsored by the gambling industry.
Yes.
Which is a very nasty industry in my point of
Yeah.
view. Maybe I'm showing my Protestant background, as it were.
No, I'm not a Protestant, and I fully support your position on this. My attitude towards gambling, especially towards the National Lottery, is that it's surreptitious taxation for the statistically ignorant.
Yes, yeah. A taxation on desperation and/or stupidity.
Yes, and gambling, since it's become so freely and legally available, has resulted in the destruction of a number of lives and some suicides.
Oh, yeah. And I blame Tony Blair for this. Before him, gambling was tolerated, but it wasn't allowed to advertise itself at all.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I can remember when the bookies had runners, and my grandfather used to put sixpence, that's 6D, on the horses. And he had to do it sort of, backhandedly. Yeah. Anyway, getting back to the Olympics, you're right, I think, because let's face it, sports, especially team sports, are an amicable way of settling contests. And what we have here is a contest between the women of Afghanistan and democracy, or the rest of Afghanistan. And why won't they let her proclaim her support?
And you see football with teams owned by the UAE and Qatar, and now Saudi Arabia are in on the act. You're telling me that's not political?
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible. We're going to come on to this, I think, in a minute, but it's impossible. I get a lot of this because I like to post on different Facebook groups about atheism and disputatious sites where it's atheism versus theism or something like that. And I get told that I can't post my my news because it's political. Well, there are some religions which have managed to enmesh together religion and politics. It's not possible to separate them. And if you're
Quite
trying
agree.
to do that, you're going to fail.
Quite agree. Yeah.
Anyway, should we move on?
Yeah.
This athlete lives in Spain now. She's fled Afghanistan because, of course, music and dancing has been banned there, and she's a dancer. So it's just, but do you know what the Taliban have said? They've said, we respect women's rights in line with Sharia law. Well, that's not much women's rights, is it?
I respect pigs' rights in line with my meat-eating diet.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, yes. Pigs have the same right as sausages. Oh dear. Anyway, let's go to Germany, where a few weeks ago, the Islamic Center and the Blue Mosque, which they are an extremist end of the Islamic regime, and they were banned in Germany a few weeks ago. And now, Mohammed Hadi Mofateh, who's the director of the Islamic Center, has been told he must leave Germany within 14 days.
Good riddance, I suspect.
Well, the Germans are getting tough, aren't they?
Well, I don't know the ins and outs of this story, but you know, there's some very nasty Islamists out there,
Yes.
and if you can throw one of them out the country, well, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so you may, as a Taylor Swift fan, you may know that
From my grey hair, you can tell.
we're both Swifties, I'm sure. No. You may be aware that she had a concert cancelled in Vienna, and the CIA have done, they were behind the cancellation because apparently they did some investigation and found this plot by suspects, 3 male teenagers who've been arrested, and they're allegedly inspired by the Islamic State group, IS. And so their intention apparently was to kill a huge number of people. And of course, this is mostly teenagers, mostly female teenagers, and their boyfriends, you know. But that's the audience, isn't it, for Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
And these wonderful IS agents, activists, were intending to kill hundreds of them. And the CIA discovered the plot and disrupted it, prevented it.
Well done, CIA.
Yeah.
Well done, everyone involved in discovering this. I mean, these people are about as low as you can get, aren't they? I mean, killing children, killing teenagers.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get much more despicable.
No.
Than doing that. And
they did
I feel Islamic State is kind of pure crystallized evil.
Yes. And of course, they did the same in Manchester last year or the year before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the idea, I mean, it's misogyny, isn't it?
Yes.
It's very much misogyny, which is the same thing you see with the Taliban.
Yes.
And it's just appalling. It's awful.
Yeah.
So, well done, the United States. I mean, in a sense, it was a good thing that we saw that the USA and Iran and the Iranian-backed militias and the Syrian regime and the Soviet Union and Russia all worked together to destroy the Islamic State.
Yeah.
And well done them. That was necessary.
Yeah, they at the end of the caliphate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's still going on
Yeah.
in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. I don't know if you're. These are the inland states up from the coast of West Africa, below the Sahara, in that sub-Saharan band there. And they're still battling various Islamist groups. And what's happened in all three countries is the military seized power. So they're not democracies. And they formed the Alliance of Sahel States. And they've cut ties with the former colonial power, which was France. And they've befriended Russia instead, buying weapons and deploying fighters from the mercenary group formerly known as the Wagner Group, which is now known as the Afrika Korps. However, it's still sort of controlled by Russia, and Russia needs soldiers to fight Ukraine in their minds. So they've withdrawn 100 of these paramilitary officers from the Burkina Faso Islamist contest to go to Ukraine to help with the war there. And this is the Bear Brigade. It's the new name for the Wagner Group. But it's a private military company. You know, what's the name for these people? Not guerrillas, no.
Mercenaries.
Mercenaries, that's right. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So they've been there supporting the military junta of these countries against the Islamist incursions, but they've now been called back home to fight. So it's all a mess, and the only people
it sounds very much a mess, doesn't it?
Yeah, the only people benefiting from it might be the Islamists.
Yeah.
There you go. In the UK, the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has recently announced that we're suspending about 30 arms export licenses to Israel, which, according to Israel's foreign minister, sends a very problematic message to Iran.
I actually approve of this. We may disagree here, John, but I think the Israelis have every right to wage war on Hamas.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
You know, what Hamas did on the 7th of October was unforgivable.
And what they continue to do, using their own population as a shield, is also unforgivable.
But I think the Israelis have every right to wage war on Hamas. What they don't have the right to do is to go into Gaza and smash the place up and inflict collective punishment on the Palestinians in Gaza. And it seems to me that's what they're doing. And from what I've read, public opinion in Israel couldn't care less.
Well,
as far as Israelis are concerned, they want the hostages back, but they couldn't care less about the Palestinians.
Well,
and you've got two bunches of extremists who are slogging it out.
Yeah. But I think that may have been the case about the public not caring less. But more recently, there's been lots of uprisings in Israel protesting about their own government led by Netanyahu. They don't like their government doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think Netanyahu is prolonging the war.
Yes.
In order to stay in power.
Yes. Well, he's probably
to keep out of prison.
Exactly. Yes, just what I was going to say. Yeah.
He is a bad man, and he is surrounded by some very nasty, extreme right wing, often ultra religious Jewish settler groups.
Isn't it weird that probably the majority? I've seen some figures on this. I haven't got them here, but the majority population in Israel is probably secular.
Oh, yeah.
And yet they still, somehow, by a quirk of democracy, manage to get themselves a far-right government elected.
Mm. I
Something's
mean, the problem with Israel and Palestine is that the Second Intifada destroyed the Israeli left,
yes,
you know,
yes,
by sending suicide bombers to blow up people queuing for the bus.
yes, yes,
Um, they stopped Israelis believing that peace with Palestine was possible.
yes, yes,
And it's just a desperate situation.
yeah,
Um, I'm reminded a bit of Northern Ireland. Remember Northern Ireland? There was a kind of solution in the 1980s, the
mm,
Sunningdale Agreement. Was
yeah.
that in the 70s or the 80s? Possibly in the 70s.
Uh, no, it's late.
And this was sabotaged by the Loyalists and the Republicans.
Yes, yes,
And the same people, 30 years later, and
yes,
several thousand deaths later,
yes,
signed an almost identical
yes,
agreement,
yes,
Good
yes,
Friday Agreement,
yes,
which some people called Sunningdale for slow learners.
yes, yes. That's right. Yes, I realise now what you meant earlier. But yeah, so
And my
and
hope
they,
is that after a few decades of slugging it out, the Israelis and the Palestinians might sign an agreement which is very similar to what they nearly signed in the 1990s.
well, we can
Who
hope.
knows?
No sign of it at the moment.
None at all.
And it would need what you had there was a coalition between the UK and America to get the IRA to come to heel and agree to
Mm,
go to democracy and get themselves elected and then not turn up.
mm. Better that than bombers.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. Well, while you've mentioned Ireland, they've recently had a report which was commissioned by the Irish government, and it's revealed that in more than 300 schools run by religious orders, there's been almost 2,400 allegations of sexual abuse.
It's
They found
appalling, isn't it?
they found 884 alleged abusers that formerly ran the schools or even still do.
Wow.
The Catholic religious orders, or the body that runs these schools, said it was deeply sorry.
Well, that's very nice of them, isn't
Sounds a bit minimal to me.
it? I mean, I once ran a school where
Yeah.
we had a language school where we had allegations of sexual abuse by a member of staff
Mm.
on teenagers.
Oh yeah.
And we called the police that day,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and the police arrested him, and the police dealt with him.
Yeah.
Um, and this is where the Catholic Church, and not only the Catholic Church, other religious institutions get it wrong every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they
You know?
don't even accept man's laws, do they?
Yeah,
Because they've got a greater lawmaker. It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, this is suspicion. Get the police.
Yeah.
Let them deal with it. I mean, this kind of thing, and they're so concerned with the reputation of the church, and they go and post these people to another parish, don't they?
Yes. Yes. Naughty boy.
Absolutely appalling.
Naughty
Yeah,
boy. You're
naughty
banning.
boy.
Yes.
Pray to God, let Him forgive you,
Yes. Yeah.
and now go and do it again.
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the UK, because the NSS, the National Secular Society, is getting a bit cross with the BBC, because I think it was a Radio London interview, BBC Radio London, they had with Haitham Al-Haddad, who is an imam. And he was interviewed by Asad Ahmad, one of the BBC's interviewers, about the far-right violence and extremism which has popped up in our cities recently.
Mm.
And the BBC presenter introduced him as highly respected. And the NSS took issue with this because in 2018, the lead commissioner for countering extremism, Sarah Khan, said about this Haitham, and I'm not sure about the pronunciation, Haitham al-Haddad. He said his views are misogynistic, racist, and homophobic. They promote a supremacist us versus them worldview that wrongly makes Muslims feel that they can't be fully British. And of course, the problem is that the BBC's editorial guidelines on impartiality state that the particular viewpoints of contributors should be made available to the audience when relevant to the context. And the NSS is complaining that they didn't. They didn't make, because his viewpoints, let's listen to this. He's said, he's on record as having said, Islamically approved female circumcision is better for the husband and a virtue or honor for women.
Is that legal to say that?
Well, I don't know. It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I mean, well done the National Secular Society for keeping tabs on the BBC, and shame on the BBC for presenting an Islamic extremist as highly respected. Exactly,
yes. Let me tell you some of his other views. You will be permanently shocked, I think. In the Times, it was reported that he believes all Western women should submit to Allah and wear the niqab. Can you see that being a popular policy in this country?
I think it probably would be, yeah.
It were in any Western country.
I mean, didn't anyone at the BBC Google this guy? It's not hard, is it?
Yeah, yeah. Listen to his views on domestic violence. A man should not be questioned why he hit his wife, because this is something between them.
There is a passage in the Quran, isn't there, which permits wife beating.
Is there?
Yeah, and I read about this. The 5 schools of Islamic jurisprudence all suggest that this passage actually means you shouldn't beat your wife. Though it quite clearly says you can if you want to, but not too hard.
Yeah, they'll spin anything, won't they?
It's quite amazing how they spin it that way, but they do, and it's there.
It's like the Bible on slavery. You know, you can beat them as long as they don't die.
Yeah, yeah.
Within an inch of death is okay.
Or if you rape a virgin, if you marry her,
yes,
you have to pay the father 50 shekels or whatever it is.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah. It does seem to be a little bit biased, doesn't it?
It does. I wonder if it was written by men or women.
I wonder. So Al-Haddad was asked, apparently, for advice on the best age for a teenage girl to marry. What do you think he said?
I don't know. Did he say teenage? Did they have to be that old?
Yes. He said, the younger the better.
God's truth.
Yeah. And according to him, homosexuality is a criminal act and God hates homosexuals.
I'm glad he's full of love.
And that was reported by the BBC themselves.
So why were they interviewing this guy?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, never mind calling him highly respected.
Yeah, indeed. Now, we don't often get to go to Australia, but we are today, because they have an e-safety commissioner, who's a lady called Julie Inman Grant. And she took X, that we used to call Twitter, to court over its refusal to remove videos of a religiously motivated Sydney church stabbing. She said that wasn't appropriate to be on X and ordered it to be removed. And what happened was Eventually that case was dropped, but Elon Musk doxed her children. I didn't know what this meant, but apparently it means releasing the documentation, releasing their addresses and names so that
Wow.
yeah, I know.
Wow.
Yeah. So she says her children were doxed after she was targeted by Elon Musk for attempting to regulate his social media platform. He said she's the censorship commissar in a post to his 196 million followers. And the result of that, of course, was she received an avalanche of online abuse, which she says it amounted to a dog whistle from a very powerful tech billionaire who owns his own megaphone. And she said the torrent of online vitriol prompted Australian police to warn her against traveling to the US. And the names of her children and other family members have been released across the internet. There's been threats to my employees, my family, threats to my safety, including credible death threats. I've had to involve the federal and local police and change my movements.
There's two things I want to say about this. One is I recently I refuse to call it X, on Twitter, somebody who I follow posted the question, why is there so much evil in the world? And I looked at the thread, and one of the answers was mostly the Jews. So that was what it said, mostly the Jews. So I reported this to Twitter, to X, as racism, as, you know, straight down the line, anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And 48 hours later, I got a report back, this does not violate our rules.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think, wow, you know, how can things like that how can that be acceptable?
Yeah, yeah.
And what he's done to that woman and her children.
Yes.
How can that be acceptable? Second thing I'd like to say, I read Tom Holland, the historian's book, about Caesar. And what Tom Holland said in his book is that the Roman Republic was destroyed when people like Pompey and Caesar made so much money from their military campaigns that the Republic could no longer contain them.
Yeah.
They were just too wealthy to live in a partially democratic system.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk is apparently going to become the world's first trillionaire in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think we have to ask ourselves the question, can democracy survive people like him becoming so rich?
Yeah, yeah.
And I suspect it can't.
The love of money corrupts.
It does, and money brings power.
Yes.
It brings immense power. I mean, Brazil, well done, Brazil, have tried to bring him to heel, haven't they?
Yes.
And they said, we will not tolerate the misinformation that you're putting on your social media. And they've banned X in Brazil. Well, good luck to them with that.
That's right.
And I think the European Union are beginning to make moves towards him. But he's a very powerful person with a lot of followers, increasingly right-wing. I get a thread of emails called the Nerd Reich. Have you heard that?
No, I haven't.
Which is about how these tech billionaires want to escape the bounds of the state.
Yeah.
And they're these extreme libertarians who are trying to set up islands of power that they can control outside the control of states. And I think it's time these guys were brought to earth, because if they're not, I don't think our democracy will survive them.
Well, I've stopped buying Teslas, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy one. I had shares in Tesla.
Did you?
I wouldn't have them now. Lost a lot of money, but I wouldn't have them on principle now.
Yeah, it's good to have principles. So I've got a couple of lighter items that you will like. One is about Prince William, who will be our next monarch, you know, if he survives, all being well. And he is now rumored to be considering foregoing the religious oaths at his coronation. That could lead to the separation of religion from the state.
Well, good. When the coronation happened, it was very much an Anglican service, wasn't
it? Yes, yes.
You know, I mean, I'm ambivalent about the monarchy, but yeah, if you're going to have a monarchy, let's have it as secular as we can.
Yes, indeed. That's how I feel too. I'm. You could describe me as a monarchist, but not a royalist. I'm trying to make the distinction between a non-political leader.
Yeah, which there's a case for us, isn't there?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
A non-political leader with no power.
Yes, yes, quite a figurehead. Yeah. So that I think is good news. And finally, I'm going to show you a video that I think you'll also consider to be good news. Take a look at this.
We only want to go back to what we were, the moderate Islam that is open to the world, open to all the religions. %70 of the Saudi people are less than 30 years old. And quite frankly, we will not waste 30 years of our lives in dealing with extremist ideas. We will destroy them today. We want to live a normal life, a life that translates our moderate religion, our good customs. We coexist and live with the world and contribute to the development of our country and the world. This is something that there are steps that we have taken in the past that are clear. I believe that we will eradicate the rest of extremism very soon.
I think MBS is a very interesting historical figure. Mm-hmm. And he reminds me of the European enlightened despots in the 18th century, because he is a despot.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's the murder of Khashoggi.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember her name. There was the woman who led the campaign for the right for women to drive.
That's right, yes.
And women have the right to drive, but she is serving a very long prison sentence.
Oh, is she? Yeah.
At the same time. And he's sending out the message, you know, I'll give the people what they want, but I won't take any opposition. You know, he's very much a despot. He's giving young Saudis what they want, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's giving them a bit of freedom.
Yeah, yeah.
Music, cinema, sport.
Yeah.
Chance to have a good time while they're young.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful thing that the Saudi monarchy and the Wahhabist Muslims have been in coalition since the 1740s.
Wow.
And this has broken up. Mohammed bin Salman has broken this coalition. And Wahhabism is a very austere, very extreme, puritanical form of Islam.
Yes.
And Saudi Arabia has done enormous damage over the last 30 years by financing Wahhabist Islam all over the world.
Yes.
You know, a lot of mosques are built but with Saudi money.
Yes.
A lot of imams are trained with Saudi money in Wahhabism. And they have brought us Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, etc. So it's really good to see this alliance break up.
Yes.
And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I think young Saudis will support him enthusiastically.
Yes, yes. Is it possible to be a populist despot?
Well, the phrase is enlightened despot, isn't it?
Is it? Yes.
Yeah, and I think he is an enlightened despot, but boy, is he a despot.
Well, better an enlightened despot than a non-enlightened despot.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a journey in the right direction.
Yes, I think so. But have no illusions about him.
No.
He's not a very nice man.
No. He's not. It's not that monarch who has a princess who tried to escape and was captured.
No, that was UAE.
Yeah.
That was the head of the UAE. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Who I think he kidnapped his daughter back again or something
Yes,
like that.
that's right. Yes. And she's never been heard of since. Yeah.
I mean, Mohammed bin Salman has been pretty ruthless in taking power and seizing power.
Mm.
I've no idea what his life expectancy is going to be.
No.
No, but very interesting.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Paul, thank you very much for your contributions.
Okay, it's been my pleasure.
Good. Yeah. So I'm going to play out the outro, and then if you've got a few moments, we can continue to chat. Which won't be recorded. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Russia was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carrying on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that guy?